Good morning, everybody. It is Tuesday, March 15th. Normally, I would say this is a virtual meeting, but I'm happily to report this is a real in-person meeting, and I call this meeting to order at exactly 9 o'clock a.m. Thank you all for being here. Would you please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. We'll start off with roll call. Commissioner Tony Sharp.
Here.
Commissioner Jay Legree.
Here.
Commissioner Ed Stranowski.
Here.
Commissioner Tim Bennett.
Here.
Commissioner Patrick Gossett.
Here.
Commissioner Susan Gay.
Here.
And Mayor Stan Mills is here. We have a full complement of the mayor and commissioners, and we are able to formally conduct business today as we have a quorum. First, I'd like to congratulate Commissioner Sharp and Commissioner Bennett. I believe this is your first in-person meeting since being elected. Whoa, amazing, amazing. It's nice to see your faces in person. So thank you for being here. With that, we'll go to correspondence, and I have no correspondence that was identified for today's meeting. I would like to recognize some of the other members that of the staff that are here that help support this meeting and participate. City Manager Sharon Lynn, Glenn Mandalis, City Solicitor, Lynn Cohen, Communications Specialist, Kevin Williams, Public Works Director, Evan Miller, Project Coordinator, Howard Rothstein with Building and Licensing. And again, I want to thank all the members of the public that are here in person, as well as those that are watching live streamed or recorded. With that, we're going to recognize that the purpose of this special meeting is to discuss outdoor dining on public space policy. This is session number 3. And we may include possible consideration of policy components, possible consideration meaning possible vote of policy components, including but not limited to size restrictions for outdoor dining patios, or dining areas on public space, dates for starting and stopping use of public space for outdoor dining, allowance of split seating or not, and license fee amount. Again, they're listed as possible consideration, possible votes, because if we can't reach consensus on something, I'd like to have a vote so that it is resolved. The intention here is that out of today, we try to settle as much as we can. And then on the March 18th, with the agenda is already posted, additional discussion and likely vote on the entirety of the outdoor dining on public space policy. I wanted to emphasize this morning that we're talking about outdoor dining on public space because we're not talking about dining on private space or neighboring properties today. At the April workshop, I intend to address that, so stay tuned. With that, we've got a lot of work done by my colleagues, Commissioner Gossett, Evan Miller, Howard Rothstein, Matt Janis, and also City Manager Sharon Lynn. I wanted to thank them for all their hard work on this. I think we've proved to you that we have a very logical approach to this, starting off with setting philosophical foundations that form the basis for these. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Commissioner Gossett.
Good morning, Mayor. Thank you very much. Again, thanks to all the folks that worked on this, Howard, Matt, Evan, Mayor, and Sharon also. Just again, to remind everyone, what we're dealing with today is dining only on public property. We do have an ordinance in place for patio dining that is in place, and as the mayor mentioned, we may venture into that at future meetings. But right now, this is only on public property. And up on the screen, we've got the draft policy through that. A couple other points I just wanted to talk to you about is one of the things that we've used with regards to develop these are best practices. And one of them that was brought forward was by the Rossi Group when they were helping design the Baltimore-Wilmington streetscape. And using those pedestrian access route dimensions of 7 feet minimum for ADA compliance and also crowds that are anticipated in the area. That's another basis that we use, just best practices. And then we also had the consideration of things that we were not able to control. And really that main focus comes to us through two areas: the Americans with Disability Act, which we have to follow with regards to, again, spacing and areas of that need and obstacles in the pathway, but also HB 290, which was just recently passed by the governor, which addresses outdoor dining on public space and expanded outdoor dining. And that really talks to specifically about barriers that are indicated and the control of the area where alcohol is being served. So those are state rules that we need to comply with. So then moving forward with following up on discussions from our last meeting, there were a couple of things as been highlighted in the agenda that were brought to our attention that were concerns. And one was the maximum allowable area for outdoor dining on public space. And after further discussions among the group here, that specific limitation has been eliminated from that standpoint of the 750 maximal combined. The patio dining of 750 still exists in the code as it has. These are really talked about. They've been removed so I can't reference the line number in the policy, so because they don't exist. But where they really are defined is in line 95 through 115 in the dining area. And we can just say that dimensions of outdoor dining, and it talks there specifically about how the tables need to be set, where their location is, the distance that's required for the tables, the distance required for a service aisle, and also the distance measurement of the barrier that is required. Again, relating back to HB 290 for control of the area of served and alcohol. The next point that we discussed, I'm just going to go on and we'll get to questions afterwards if that's okay. The effective dates, there were some questions on that. So that we've addressed there in lines 204 to 214. And we have extended the dates throughout the year. So you apply for a permit from the city for dining on public property, and that permit can run from January 1st through December 31st. However, the concern was expressed, what if we have a snowstorm or a Sea Witch Festival or other public festivals or what have you that affect the crowds, if you will. So we've developed some language here, and I'll just read it. Outdoor dining may be suspended by the city manager for community or special events, utility, sidewalk, or road repairs, or emergency situations or violations of provisions contained in this policy. So the other guidelines there. The length of the suspension will be for a duration as determined by the city manager. It may be a few hours, it may be an afternoon, it may be up to, who knows, depending on the issues at hand. Obviously, if there's a water main break or a pipe break or something of that nature, those are the types of emergency situations that this area addresses, so that we have the ability to have the area safe for our workers or have a large crowd that's gathering, as I said, for Sea Witch or 4th of July or something of that nature. The other aspect is just the sort of the appearance of the area. So this addresses the seasonality of it. When the outdoor dining area is closed for longer than 30 consecutive calendar days or closed by the city manager or code enforcement officer, removal of chairs, tables, related equipment, and obstructions will be at the direction of the city official, and the removal of stated items will be from public space is the responsibility of the restaurant owner or operator. So this is, if you close down, basically covering the aspect if you close down for the season, depending on your location, the removal of items or the storage of items needs to be addressed. Again, tables and chairs kind of hanging out there in January and February, as long as they're stacked or stored in such a way so it just doesn't look like you can come up and take a seat. Again, trying to look at the cleanliness and the orderliness of the outdoor dining areas. And then the third area that we heard concern on and we adjusted were the fees, and that's in lines 215 to 219. Basically, what we have done is taken the existing fee structure that we use for other aspects of building and licensing and applied this here, so that if you have, for code review or application review, it's a fee of $150 shall accompany the application seeking a license for outdoor dining on public space. And then upon granting of the license, the applicant shall pay an additional annual fee of $163 for non-alcohol establishments and $325 for restaurants serving alcohol. Those are the annual fees that are in existence now for a restaurant to have a license, and that we just continue that so to keep it as consistent as possible. The $150 fee is the fee charged to any person applying for a review of plans, whether you're building a house or a restaurant or what have you, to take the time and staff time for that purpose. The fee of $150 has been established and in effect for quite some time. So those are the three areas of adjustments that we have made based on the discussions of the past meetings. And I guess we'll open it up for any other questions or thoughts as we go from there.
Thank you, Commissioner. One of the things we will talk about is the split dining area, so we'll add that component in here. And I would like to maybe start off with trying to resolve some of these questions as you articulated here. One would be the size restrictions. And again, as Commissioner Gossett mentioned, the little outsourced dining team here kind of said, we heard you last time, let's get rid of it. What it amounts to is giving a freebie, extra square footage to a restaurant. And the way I looked at it was, okay, let's say you are a restaurant that has 50 foot wide of frontage. And remember, the allowable or permittable dining table layouts, you can either have a two-top table that is 6 feet deep in dining area, or you can have a four-top table that you can look at the illustrations on the screen there. You can have a four-top table that requires a minimum of 8 foot in depth there. So talking it out, if let's say you have a 50 foot wide frontage area, most likely you're going to have to subtract for entryways, for accessibility to your neighbor's property, accessibility to the fire Y connections, et cetera. So let's say you can only yield 30 foot of width across your front there. And you want to put two tables there, two top tables there, 6 foot deep, that's 30 foot wide times 6 foot, that's 180 square foot of additional dining area that you would be able to get up and above the current code allowance. If you wanted a table for four, you have enough room for a table for four, at least 8 foot depth. The same scenario, say maybe 30 feet wide, maybe it's 35, maybe it's only 20, but using 30 feet wide times 8 feet deep, you get 240 extra square foot as a freebie, if you will. So we'd open that up for discussion, see if we can settle that. If there's a disagreement, again, what I would like to do is come to consensus, and if we need to conduct a vote on it so that we are comfortable finalizing this policy and having it available to the public and everybody embedded in the agenda, which is already posted for Friday's meeting. So is there entertain any discussion on the size limitations for outdoor dining on public space?
I think it's a good policy. I think it's a good change.
Make sure you speak into the microphone.
I support it fully. I think it's a great change.
So you're supportive of the size?
Of the size not being limited, correct?
Okay.
Because for the reasons you articulate, that there's not a lot of room anyway there.
Okay.
Yeah.
And again, I want to keep emphasizing this is outdoor dining on public
Right.
space right now we're talking about.
Mayor, I absolutely concur that this sounds like a very positive step in the right direction. I just have one curiosity. Was there any other proposal that you seriously considered and decided this was the best way to go? Just curious, or if this just really, resonated that this was the right thing to do?
I think this is based on experience of the last two seasons, that Howard and Matt brought to the table, and that the consistency in applying this and trying to enforce it, if you will, so that everybody is on a even playing base for this. This is really what was brought forward, and again, talking with others in the community, that there didn't seem to be any other options, really, that this was the best way forward.
Thank you. It looks good to me.
Yeah, thank you. And of course, the area of the outside dining is pretty much limited. Yeah, remember our philosophies, our basis for creating this policy is that no more full width of sidewalk can be used, et cetera. So it's somewhat self-limiting in itself. But I'm also mindful that during COVID, we suspended the rules. And now with COVID somewhat close to behind us, we found that establishing definitive policy or rules are, what is needed.
And also just an overarching thought on that process, just to remind everyone, as we kind of maybe accept it or take it for granted, we have over 40 outdoor dining patios in the city currently. So there is outdoor dining available and has been for quite some time. I mean, the outdoor dining policy, patio policy, was put into place in the 1990s, I believe. So again, this is expanding already on what is available to the city.
I certainly appreciate the removal of the any maximum space. I was pretty vocally opposed to it at the last meeting. I guess clarification though, if I'm reading this correctly and looking at the figures up there, is they can only a business can only have a 4-top or 2-top against the facade. They cannot have anything more than that. If they've got 20 feet of space against their facade before hitting what would be the required pedestrian walkway area, can they not have 2 4-tops side by side? How far into that space can they go?
You're talking, I need clarity here. You're talking about not tables side by side along the facade. You're talking about stacked like this?
Yeah, so let's say you've got 3 4-tops against the facade, and you still have 25 feet of space, right? There's some areas that have very wide sidewalks. Can you then have space and then another 4-top into?
No, we've limited. Do you want to?
Yeah, I believe based just on the availability of sidewalks in town, that having the tables as placed as they are, there are 2-tops or 4-tops, plus the aisle and then the barrier. And this is really site specific. And I kind of turned to Howard and Evan because they've been out measuring. And I don't believe that really any place exists that we could come up with a deeper dining area than currently is outlined in the examples.
No, I believe that the only place would be where Conch Island is.
Right.
And right now, there's nothing there anyway.
So that you guys did look, and that's the only.
Really, yeah.
I mean, that's what I was thinking of. That's a very.
All of
wide
these
sidewalk.
are site-specific, really. I mean, measured on, and that's the reason for the application being reviewed and say, I got 6 inches, 2 feet, what have you. So these are the guidelines or the policy, but that for each application, it would have to be reviewed. There may be some depth, as you say, Conch Island is one, but we don't know what's going in there at this present time, so.
And Commissioner, in the illustrations on how to measure whether I can have a dining area or not, if you take a look back at that, it has an example of a sidewalk that's a little wider than the norm. In that area, the minimum pedestrian access route is 7 feet because it's in the 3rd block of Rehoboth Avenue. That affords, because it's a 17.5-foot sidewalk depth there, that allows for the minimum 7-foot pedestrian access route plus an 8-foot dining area that facilitates tables for 4. And that actually leaves a balance of maybe 3 7, 8, 9, 2.5 feet. So that balance goes into the pedestrian access route. We thought that that was the benefit of doing this, that the excess would go to the pedestrian route and that made sense.
Thank you for the clarification.
So are we comfortable, the finalized policy that we'll be voting on? Doesn't mean you have to agree to it 100%, but what I'm hearing or not hearing is that I think everybody's somewhat comfortable for this size restriction to be omitted and to go forward for a vote on Saturday. Any objection? On Friday. Thank you. Thank you. Keep an eye on me.
So if I could just ask one more question. To
Yes.
put it into perspective, a restaurant that has plenty of space to have 4 tops, if they have a 50-foot wide frontage, what's the max number of tables they could have?
You're talking about 50 foot of width of building. We can't determine that because everything's on an individual basis. You've got to look at the totality of the criteria. First, you look at the depth of the sidewalk overall. Then you have to look at the minimum pedestrian access route. Then you have to look at the desired depth of what's available and whether it would accommodate a table for 2, meaning it needs at least 6 foot minimum depth, or whether it can accommodate a table for 4, which means it needs a minimum of 8 foot depth. And then you've got to look at the number of egresses, accesses, the impact on your neighbor with respect to their accesses, access to alleyways. You need to look at the access for fire department-wide connections. You can't put anything close to that, so it's really has to be on an individual basis. Patrick?
Exactly, and we don't really think of it when we're sitting outside or sitting inside dining, but these, the ADA and the fire marshal rules are based on the fact that if there were an emergency in the building, a fire in the building, and the point of egress was the front door, that getting everybody out the door at one time, that to have that distance on either side of the entrance doors is necessary, and again, with tables out front. Again, we don't think about those, but going back to building codes and the fire inspector and maximum capacities and those types of things, these design standards are built from the aspect of an emergency and everybody exiting the building at one time. So if you had 100 people in the restaurant, had a fire, everybody's heading for the front door. If you've got tables close to the door, et cetera, those are the reasons and the design standards that we follow from that basically, I won't say are out of our control, but are provided for the public safety in going forward.
And on lines 97 to 99, you'll notice there's a mention about the design standard for maximum width of allowable dining area in public space. And one of the things it does is articulates that there needs to be a buffer around the entrances. But also it says that if you're a corner property, we want you set back at least 3 feet from the corner so that you don't become an impediment to pedestrians.
And also driving sight lines.
Drive, what?
Driving sight lines at a corner also.
Right, right, thank you. Are we ready to go on to the next one?
Yeah, thank you.
All righty. Commissioner Gossett, what is our next item there?
Really effective dates, and the effective date is year-round. You apply for a license for those dates, and as I read earlier, the caveat on policy to allow city manager or building official to make some determinations for clearing the area for hurricanes, snowstorms, for clearing the sidewalks, events, social events, our Sea Witch, crowds of 4th of July if we have a parade. Christmas parade probably wasn't affected because there's a lot of attendance, but everybody wants to sit in their cars and watch because it's cold. But those types of aspects, and then again, the 30 consecutive days, just trying to keep the cleanliness of the city and its appearances. So if you're going to close for an extended period of time, 30 days beyond, that the materials, chairs, tables, waitress, hostess stands, those types of things need to be stowed in a way that they're not going to be affected by weather. Because if you're closed in January and we get a snowstorm or something of that nature, or a nor'easter come through, that you can't contact the owner if they're away to have these materials stored in such a way that they won't become hazards during the storm or impediments of trying to get the streets or sidewalks cleaned. So again, just these are aspects of being able to control the space for a prolonged period of time.
Thank you, Commissioner. Some of my things on this are, I was concerned that if a outside dining area closed for a period of time, I was concerned more about the aesthetics and the safety of it. My preference would be that you don't see umbrellas sitting out there year round when it's closed for 4 months or so. And of course, there's a safety issue also. If you've got hostess stands there that are liable to blow over, want them removed. If you recall, the original dates put on here were April 1st to October 15th. October 15th was decided as a date to proceed the Sea Witch Festival sufficient time ahead of time. We talked about that last time. Carol Everhart of the Rehoboth Beach, Dewey Beach Chamber of Commerce mentioned that really what the concern was for Sea Witch was removal of the traffic barriers in the road. And now that part of our philosophical foundations, the basis for our policy says we shall not use the roadway anymore and have those, and that's resolved that. And we've said no more use of the full width of the sidewalk, so maybe that's okay there to change this to a year-round program instead of having time limitations on it. And again, remember, we're going to do an evaluation after the next summer. Anything can be changed or tweaked. But that's what's on the table now, and I'd like to get your feedback. And if you're okay, especially with it being on for a vote on the as part of the policy next Friday.
Well, I asked for it to be year-round and for the inclusion of the city manager to have discretion, so I appreciate the changes being made. Thank you.
I think, oh, sorry, go ahead.
And Mayor, last time I was looking for a policy that was simple, straightforward, and speedy, since, time is of the essence here. So the only question I have, and it may have answered itself already, is with the experience that we've already had with outdoor dining, is there anything that came from the guests of the businesses or the businesses themselves that we have not been able to address? Or do we feel we've done the best we can at this juncture to get up and going?
I think we've done the best, of course, pat all our backs, and I think we've done a good job, but we haven't heard a lot from the restaurateurs except through the Chamber of Commerce. And the main thing that I heard talking one-on-one with the restaurateurs is how valued outdoor dining is. And of course, when I go on the media, I tout that it's not just the restaurateurs that like it because of the profit motive, so to speak, but their patrons love it. And what the witness is what we see all the patrons using it. And interesting, I also say that even the visitors I find enjoy walking the streets and looking at people dining and everything. So I think we've done a good job on it. In terms of year-round versus time-limited, what I've heard from some of the restaurateurs is that, here it is, we've been told to close at the end of the season, and all of a sudden there's a full week that's absolutely gorgeous. It's a shame that we can't use it. So this, I think, allows for that provision for them to be able to do that. Patrick, you? Or
I mean, I just follow along with what you've said, Mayor. I think Howard and Evan have had more conversations with restaurateurs, out measuring the sidewalks and coming up with the dimensions for the individual sites. But again, it is an aspect of, adds to the ambiance of the community. There's no question about that. You know, it is kind of hard to put the genie back in the bottle in the sense that we've had it for 2 years. And it was sort of no holds barred at that time from the standpoint because we were accommodating reduced occupancy seating in the restaurants and what have you. So this is, there were really very few rules to play by for the past 2 years. And I think for the most part, restaurants are very understanding and abided by the policy that we established quite quickly 2 years ago. But I think this really outlines it so that eventually, after a review in October of this, that we will codify this so that it is in place for the future, based on the experiences of this season.
Thank you. Commissioners?
I think it's a good change. I'm reminded that the last time we had a discussion about it, it was a nice day where, you know, here it was in I guess it was early March, and that's one of the things that brought this topic up, is that people could have been sitting out that very day. So so I'm glad to see this. I guess one question I would have is, I understand that the outdoor dining may be suspended for special events. Do we envision that happening? You mentioned Sea-Witch, you mentioned 4th of July, but I'm also very aware of Carol Everhart's statement that for Sea-Witch, it's not really necessary. She didn't envision it as being necessary. So I'm just curious if you see that happening, or if that's just in here as a provision, or because you have to plan ahead for those events.
I think it's just, I think it's just a note for out of caution.
Okay.
You know, and I can't, maybe the example I can think of is July 4th weekend and all the crowds, and it's overwhelming, the sidewalks, and it fails. Then maybe we have to do something for Sea-Witch or something as a possibility. Okay.
It is designed, if you will, as, I won't, sort of as a general catch-all. You're not going to be able to anticipate everything, but there's going to be some reasons so that you have to have a safety valve in order to enact something. So.
And I see it more as something to control with a storm or weather event coming, that rather than having things blow all over the place. Let's say the establishment stays open or tries to stay open, but they've got their umbrellas and everything out that's going to get blown all over in a nor'easter. Then I think this gives the city administration the authority to be able to close somebody down.
Okay, great.
Again, it's a safety element. So it sounds like that's going to be an element of the policy that we vote on. By the way, I will get to the members of the public. Maybe I'm doing a little backwards, but you will get the opportunity to speak on each and every one of these topics. And we appreciate you being here. Patrick, do you want to?
Sure. The last area that that I highlighted, talked about, were fees. And again, we just went back and looked, trying to keep it as consistent and understanding for everyone in the standpoint, these are existing fees. So that right now, for a minor interior or exterior renovation for a plan review is $150. And currently, if you apply for a license, a city license, an annual city license for a restaurant serving alcohol is $325. For an annual city license for a restaurant not serving alcohol, we're just going to cut that in half to $163. And the $325 is an existing cost of a fee right now for any restaurant to license. So you're licensing for inside, you have a license if you have a patio, and also a license for outdoor dining. So it's based on existing standards that have been in place for some time.
So again,
trying to
this
keep it
is
simple.
quite a bit different than what we proposed last time.
Correct.
However, after additional research, it mirrors existing fee structure.
As we have done, attempting to do a comparable is, you know, dates that we put up no left turn signs, or the dates that bicycles on the boardwalk, trying to be, and parking changes, trying to be consistent so that they're a little more easily understandable to the users, to the public. So these are established fees that have been in place or on the website, and can manage it from there.
Commissioner comment. Commissioner Bennett, please.
Why not just a flat fee? I mean, what's the difference between alcohol and non-alcohol?
It is, again, just trying to look at the variance between serving alcohol or not, I wouldn't be opposed to just 325 flat, but I just thought that we do have a few restaurants in town that don't serve alcohol. But again, to keep it as simple as possible, just 325 for an operating license would be fine.
I would be amenable to that.
I don't want to penalize anybody, but I'm just, maybe we meet somewhere in the middle. It just seems to me to be odd that we're going to double, if you serve alcohol, the fee.
The current fees are that.
The
Right,
current
and I'm questioning the whole thing, I guess.
Yeah, yeah.
It doesn't make any sense to me.
All right, thank
Do
you.
we know what the fees are for a restaurant serving alcohol, and
Yeah, 650,
it's $6.50?
and then
325.
325 for non-alcohol. So right now, it's set up that the ones alcohol are twice what and so this is half in each of those.
And is that a state mandate? Is that a state?
We set our own
We
fees.
set that?
Yeah.
Evan, what lines are we looking at there?
215 to 219.
215 to 219, thank you. I guess I'm looking at version 7. Numbers are a little different, but they get you close.
The only thing I'd like to offer on that is if I owned one of the restaurants that does not sell alcohol, I might question and say, why should I have to pay as much as a restaurant that does serve alcohol? So I look at it from the other perspective that maybe there should be some distinction and differentiation because of that feature of the restaurant.
And we've always had that. We've always had that distinction.
But I could also answer it back, why not? I mean, honestly, it's the same amount of work for building and licensing to evaluate and do site surveys and issue the permit. Same exact.
Right. I get that. I was
work.
just thinking about the restaurateur.
So what you're saying, Mayor, is it's sort of justifiable with the annual fee for the whole restaurant because there is a different level of work goes into the alcohol and setting up permit of compliance. I realize that's only done once, but nevertheless, but for the sidewalk, there's really no difference. So that's why you're saying you'd be okay with a flat fee, right? Okay.
I appreciate, I think we initially had the application fee at 500, so I appreciate us bringing that down and making the application fee less so that they're only paying an additional amount once it's approved. But I'm looking at a normal restaurant would be 650 or 325, and for what would be potentially two tops, the fee would be either $475 or $313. I just when you compare it to a whole restaurant versus what may only be 2 tables, 3 tables, probably 4 tables at the most, that it seems to be high. When you're comparing it to a full indoor restaurant, the fee structure being similar. That's what I'm struggling with right now.
I mean, restaurants, interior restaurants vary in size also, and we don't make a determination for if it's a 20-seat like is Federal Fritter versus Blackwall Hitch. It's all the same. So again, trying to keep it consistent as much as possible, the dividing line, if you will, or the aspect of what is the difference is alcohol versus non-alcohol. In delving into this more and more and trying to look at other codes at the time, trying to be as consistent and in applying fees and other aspects of the law, the emergency access and everything of that nature, just making it a standard fee that is it is based on X, whether it's best practices or whether it is fire marshal codes or something of that nature. I think to keep it as consistent and as simple as possible, so that the break line is alcohol versus non-alcohol, not based it on the interior number of seats of a restaurant.
Well, and part of the formula for me and our group is that we looked at the fee structure relative to the amount of work involved to monitor it. The patio dining on private property, we only really investigate, I think, once a year. based upon conversation with building and licensing, some of these outdoor dining areas kind of had creep during the summer, and so they need to be monitored with a greater frequency. And that happens whether you sell alcohol or you don't sell alcohol. So again, I can see having a one fee structure for both.
So would you propose going to 325 for all restaurants?
I'd like to see it a lower amount, maybe 150 application fee, 150 permit fee.
Would you speak up?
I think that's too low. I mean, yeah, I mean, I thought the whole reason for the objection to the 500 was that it was required for the application, and then if they didn't get approved, they were out the 500. So this at least divides it so that the 150 covers the cost, and maybe it doesn't cover the cost, but it covers it somewhat of the review process. But then there's a cost to having a license and being able to then conduct business. So,
I understand there's already an alcohol license already that they paid for, though, right?
Correct, for the state. It's $1,000 for the state annually for an alcohol license.
Can I, Howard, if I could ask, what's your involvement and what's the workload of someone that is serving alcohol and dealing with the ABCC? What's building and licensing's involvement in that?
Well, our piece of the puzzle is to go and monitor it and make sure that they have their barriers and they have their egress and, so we have to continually police them. It's not a once and done.
Part of in the application process, it's on the applicant to take whatever information we give them to go to the alcohol commissioner to get whatever license they need, right? You're not playing the middleman in that process?
In the past, we were the middleman. We, after it goes through all the agencies within the city, then I send it up to the office of the commissioner.
Okay, so the city staff sends it to the office of the commissioner, not the applicant?
Right.
Okay.
Once they apply, they'll know the stages where we're at, but when it gets sent up, then they will know that it went to the alcohol board. But we take care of it, because if we put it on them, it just will get lost.
So there is an additional step
And the
if you
reason,
sell alcohol.
the reason that the building license is becoming involved in that for this is because we are not requiring a permit of compliance for sidewalk dining, which is another set of steps to go through and application fees for individuals. So, and I think, Howard, if you want to explain or highlight on this a little bit also, that in discussions with ABCC, HB 290 is also still in its infancy of implementation and adaptation. So I think there may be some, I won't say corrections, but how it is interpreted and implied is still kind of coming forward. I mean, it only went into effect in February, so there may be some changes coming on that.
I think with the alcohol board, it's a process for them as well, because they haven't done this before either. So it's very slow going, but
Yeah, I understand that. I was trying to rationalize why it would be different for a place that serves alcohol versus not. And I think I've realized the rationale and why it's always been separate and different prices.
the alcohol board is very responsive to us, which is nice to have that kind of relationship with them. But still, it goes through their channels.
But the outdoor dining won't have to, will it?
Oh, yeah. If there's
So
Only
that-
if
that-
they're serving alcohol.
So they'd have to go through that process again?
But our office will put it through to the ABC,
Okay.
not the business owner.
So Commissioner Bennett, they may already have an alcohol license, but they need an extension of premises to use that sidewalk space, both from us and ABCC. That being said, I think I'm comfortable with the fees as they're structured.
As is?
And I think I just have one last clarification, and I'm anticipating that because we're not requiring a permit of compliance, isn't there a fee associated with a permit of compliance that will not be required as well?
That's correct.
Okay,
Yeah.
so
That's a
I'm,
big savings.
Yeah.
What is that fee, Howard?
that's
$1,000?
$1,000.
$1,000.
So I didn't want to get that, I didn't want that to get lost in this discussion, that there's an elimination of any additional fee for that permit. So, thank you.
Well, and as a future item, after summer, and we evaluate this, we may choose to codify and go back to the permit of compliance by creating and issuing a supplemental permit of compliance for outdoor dining on public space, in which case it has a little more teeth to it, so to speak. Patrick, what did you have next? I think I might want to go to the public.
Sure, that's fine. Those are the three major issues that we
All
were
right,
addressing.
so we'll talk about split dining shortly and anything else you all want to talk about. What I'd like to do is go to the members of the public. That is you all. If you have something to say, we'd appreciate you coming up to the microphone here, speaking into the microphone, stating your name, and what is your relationship to Rehoboth Beach? Are you a property owner, a resident, a restaurateur? And the topics we would particularly like to hear from you at this moment is our talk up here of getting rid of size restrictions for outdoor dining areas on public space, size restrictions, the getting rid of the time limitation and going with a year-round permit, and also the fee structure. Anybody? Oh, go ahead. Howard, would you turn on the microphone and maybe even lower it a little bit? Thank you, Carol.
So Carol Everhart, Rehoboth Beach, Dewey Beach Chamber of Commerce.
Is it,
not-
speak an inch from it.
Carol Everhart,
Yes.
Rehoboth Beach, Dewey Beach Chamber of Commerce. So interestingly enough, when we took this survey back in 2020, we didn't have outdoor dining yet. And you have accomplished all the things that were on that list as a result of that survey. The first thing was, yes, we want outdoor dining. Check. Second thing was, we wanted to be as fair as possible in spacing, as large as possible in spacing. They did understand that there were, at that point, ADA, we were talking about ADA, that type of thing. And the other thing was consider the logistics. Consider the logistics when you do that. From their point of view, with their hat on, there were several restaurants that did have concern if their wait staff was crossing across a pedestrian passage and back. Okay, so that was the result. Now, as I look at this, the one thing they're asking for the most is make it year-round. Make it year-round and as fair as possible. So everything that I'm hearing falls within the categories that they were asking for. It just appears to me that you've looked at, they knew it wasn't going to be one size fits all. They were clear on that. We said it from the beginning, one size is not going to fit all, but make the conditions and the regulations consistent and as simple as possible. So unless you have a question, that's what I have to say.
Oh, thank you very much, Carol. Appreciate it. Cindy Lovett?
Cindy Lovett for Canal Street, downtown Rehoboth. First, I want to thank you all so much for the speed that you have caused this to happen. It's just wonderful. The only comment I have is I believe Baltimore and Wilmington Avenue's outdoor dining won't be able to happen because the sidewalks are too small, at least maybe until we get streetscape, which I don't know if the sidewalks will be wider. And I'm just wondering if there's not some way to accommodate those restaurants because the vibe of those quiet streets of the last 2 years was just fantastic. And it just really brought those streets to life. So that's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Cindy. Thank you, Cindy. Before we go on to the next item, I'd like to pause a minute, Commissioner Gossett, and just talk about timing for the restaurant. We've gotten rid of the timing from April 1st to October 15th and going year-round. So what does that mean? All the existing patio dining authorizations expire at the end of this month, correct, with the state of emergency being lifted. So therefore, everybody will need to reapply from the beginning. And while we haven't said April 1st now as the start of it, everybody needs to recognize that there is a time component there. From the time we vote on this and hopefully adopt it on March 18th, which is this Friday, then that authorizes building and licensing to start reviewing and receiving applications. And we've got to recognize that there is a time component there. These things are not going to be done overnight. They need whatever amount of time, depending on how many come in and what the workload is of building and licensing. But then again, as I've mentioned before, if a restaurant sells alcohol, then the next step after receiving authorization from the city of Rehoboth Beach is to make application to the Office of the Alcohol Beverage Commissioner. And when we met with her, she indicated there is a time component there as well, because they're not only doing Rehoboth Beach, but they're doing statewide applications. So what that might mean is apply as soon as you can, and then we will act as quickly as we can. And then hopefully you can go to the state and they'll act as quickly as you can. And it might be realistically not until sometime in April or early May. We don't know. We can't give a guarantee on that. So stay tuned, and I would say act as soon as you can with that. Commissioner, do we want to go to, what do we want to go to next?
I mean, those are the three items that were brought to the attention of the discussion at the last meeting that I think there have been consensus at the table here that our offerings or solutions to these have been accepted. And I think those are, the only thing that, is sort of in the gray area is the ABCC board with HB 290 from the aspect of their reactions of responding to applications, as you've said.
I do have one additional thing that we heard last time, and that was, I think, Commissioner Czerniawski, maybe somebody else's questioning of the elimination of split dining. If you recall, one of our foundational philosophies that forms the basis of our policies says, among things, no full width use of the sidewalk. We're not going to put pedestrian pathways in the street or consume parking spaces, and we're not going to allow split dining areas. When Commissioner Czerniawski, when you mentioned the desire to re-examine the omission or prohibition on split dining, I first went out there the next day and started looking at some of the areas there. What I found was the buffer areas is what we're talking about, the areas outside of the parallel pedestrian main pathways there. Most of them are very narrow, absolutely very narrow. And they've got bicycle racks and different things. Yes, some can be moved, but some can't. But in looking at those areas, how I analyzed it was that if you look at those areas and you consider that there needs to be, say, as wide as a 1 foot wide separation barrier on 4 sides of that, there's no room left. If you look at barriers in place and you look at where they abut parallel parking spaces, you're going to have trouble with opening doors and getting people in and onto the sidewalk. If you have a diagonal or perpendicular parking space, there's a similar situation. While you don't have the doors bouncing into separation barriers, you do have problems with the drivers and the passengers and even pedestrians that cross the block, mid-block or wherever they are, accessing the sidewalk in that area without completely circumnavigating the area. So And then I'm also mindful, or was mindful, that the Chamber of Commerce, one of their surveys, they got some responses that they weren't particularly interested in wait staff crossing the sidewalk and challenges. So while I pass that on to Building and Licensing, we had Building and Licensing had the great idea, I think it was them, to approach the Office of the Alcohol Beverage Commissioner, and we got an interesting response that pretty much settles the idea there. Howard Rothstein from Building and Licensing, would you explain what you asked and what their response was, please?
I asked how they felt about split dining. It wasn't like a loaded question or anything. I just wanted to know their take on it. And they came back and said, you have to be able to control the area, which is what the barriers are for. And if you do split dining, it's hard to control it because you would have to put barriers on all sides. And you take that and then you take what the chamber is saying about not having the people cross the sidewalk. It looks like in our city, it just won't work.
But I also got additional information, Glenn, I don't know if you can contribute or not, but I got additional information that indicates that split dining does not work for the Office of the Alcohol Commissioner, because even that area where the wait staff crosses the sidewalk needs to be barricaded off so that it's under 100%. Any alcohol use areas are under 100% control within the dining area of the restaurant. So really, that makes it moot. So our philosophical foundation, if you will, stays as it is. And from there, that's also a rule, isn't it? It's, besides being a basis, it's also one of our rules or design criteria,
They
Patrick.
have to be all in controlled areas, so that, again, crossing the sidewalk from one controlled area to the other controlled area, if you will, that doesn't cut it from ABCC. It all has to be one continuous area.
I understand, and that's maybe the way it's phrased, but in actuality, there's plenty of places in Wilmington that have a break in what you're calling a controlled area. So in practice, that's not true. And I disagree. I think we should not have a prohibition on it, but I understand I'm in the minority, and that's fine. But split dining works all over the world. There's lots of places that have it. I think it's aesthetically pleasing. And we have bump outs for a reason. But I understand, and that's fine. I'm fine moving forward without it. I just, that's my position, though.
Thank you. Well, one thing we don't know about any of those establishments that are doing it now is, are they under the suspended rules and under the emergency rules? We do have a new alcohol commissioner running the Office of the Alcohol Beverage Control, and we have direct word from them. I certainly am not going to tell a restaurant and put it in our policy that it's allowable, and then send the permission of the city to the alcohol commissioner only to have them turn it down. That makes sense to me. So I appreciate your comment, and I'm certainly certain it could work in certain circumstances, but for us, I just don't see how it can work. So with that, unless there's objection, the policy with respect to that will stand, and that will be up for a vote. Patrick, any other comments on that particular split
No,
issue?
I believe that's the areas of discussion from the previous meeting that we've addressed. Everything else brought no concerns forward. And I know that Building and Licensing is currently finalizing the aspect of the actual application, so we'll be ready to go if we're able to vote to approve this policy on Friday.
So is split dining going to be an individual vote?
Well,
No, I don't, we can certainly do that, but based on the responses that we've gotten, it's moot. It's not going to happen.
the Alcohol Beverage Control Commission in interpreting what we're asking, says that you can't do that, because it's from, if you have a split dining area, you've got a controlled area where public space dining in front of the restaurant, and then if you move out front, that may have barriers around it, but that area between isn't controlled. So somebody could walk out of either a waiter or waitress serving food, but someone could certainly say, oh, I'm just going to go walk over to my table across the way and then take off without it with their cocktail. That's the concern. So it has to be an enclosed area to try to prevent that type of thing.
But if you don't serve alcohol,
Still, I don't think that split dining, based on people serving, and also aspects of if people just set up self-service tables, again, you've got people all over the place. It has to be all of our dining that we're requiring, whether it's alcohol or non-alcohol, is going to require a barrier in front of around the sidewalk dining area.
Commissioner Bennett, I agree that if you don't sell alcohol, there's a possibility you could do that, or you can do that, because we've been talking about the alcohol commissioner prohibition on it. However, if you go back to my preface and you go out there and you start looking at these locations and put up your table drawings there, and if you start looking at these drawings, they don't fit in the buffer zones. They literally don't fit. You're not going to get 6 foot there. So unfortunately, I think it's moot even for those establishments or restaurants that don't serve alcohol.
Again, trying to keep it as consistent and simple as possible. This is what the rule is, or what the guidelines are for establishing seating outside on a sidewalk, on a public space. As we said, we're going to evaluate this in October. If that becomes a real issue, or we can readdress it at that time. But I think applying these now, as we have proposed them, monitoring, see if they work, and come back in October, and have at it in the sense of responses from restaurants, responses from visitors, responses from the chamber, and what have you. I think that is a critical part of it, and that's why I've written it into the policy for evaluation.
So hearing no objections, we're going to go forward with the policy as it is in terms of split dining. Patrick, is there anything else? Do you want to open it up to the commissioners? If you have anything whatsoever to talk about, then point to it and we'll go to it and have that discussion. Hearing none, I'll go back to the members of the public and give you the same offer. Is there anything that you would like to talk about, including what we've already discussed? And if you have any other comments on anything that we haven't discussed. Again, this presentation will be available, and which includes the policy, will be available embedded in the agenda prior to Friday's meeting, so that you all can have a chance to look at it. Is this something that it needs minor, it doesn't even need any changes, does it?
No, we're good.
So we will, and can we get that embedded in the March 18th agenda later today by close of business? So we'll do that, Carol. If you want to advertise it again, then we'd appreciate it. So here's your chance. Anybody, members of the public, want to speak up? You see, we don't bite your heads off, even if we disagree with you, but we're friendly. All righty, thank you. So I'll close the public portion of that. And actually, if there's no further comments by the commissioners, we have our path forward, and we'll be looking at this exact version, correct, Patrick?
Yes.
For consideration of a vote at our Friday meeting.
So it would be a resolution, right, Lynn? So there'd be a.
Yeah, I'll prep a resolution that you adopt the resolution which establishes the policy.
Okay.
So we're adopting a resolution which adopts the policy, which basically makes it legal and gives it the force of law, even though it's not codified. Very good. Thank you very much. With that, we're going to go to the second item of business, which is executive session for the purpose of discussing personnel matters in which the names, competency, and abilities of individual employees are discussed, as permitted by the Freedom of Information Act, specifically 29 Del.C, Section 10,004B9, and for the purpose of discussing qualifications for employment as the city manager, as permitted by Freedom of Information Act, specifically 29 Del.C, Section 10,004B1.
Mayor, Mayor, I move we go into executive session permitted by 29 Delaware C,
10,004 B9.
10,004 B9 and B1.
Second.
So we have a motion on the floor by Commissioner We have a motion on the floor by Commissioner Shanowski and a second by Commissioner Tony Sharp to go into executive session for the purpose articulated. Is there any discussion? If not, we'll have just a broad vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. No, any noes? There are no noes, and the unanimously carries. I would like to preface before we leave that the length of this executive session is of unknown duration. No actions will be taken inside executive session. We will come back into public session after the executive session, but I expect no actions to be taken at that meeting. And if you notice, this is again on the agenda for March 18th. With that, we are going to go into the caucus room for executive session, and we'll be back short, whenever. Thank you.
Nice and cool in here.
Yeah, well, it is now. It was warm in here earlier.
We're in the greenhouse. Put plants in there.
It's your little, it's a fire truck. I used to look at it from over there all the time, and I thought, I couldn't remember.
Well, somebody, either.
We're live. I'd like to entertain a motion to go back out of executive session, back into public session.
So moved?
Second?
We have a motion by Commissioner Gay and a second by Commissioner Srnowski to go out of executive session and back into public session. Is there any discussion? If not, I'd like to take a group vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, no, and the motion's carried unanimously. We are now back in public session. And with that, there are no members of the audience here to ask for citizen comment. And the next item of business is adjournment. We are adjourning at 12:40 a.m. Thank you very much.
PM.
Yeah.
Yeah.